This mission is called Jabal Zayn. In this mission, we have to attack a large fortified hill that is being held by a Syrian Special Forces Battalion and remnants of the regular army. The hill is a prominent OP on the way to Hama and is to be manned by the Special Forces guys. And there's also apparently a large concentration of ATGMs in this area. So just scouting the terrain here, we can see that, as I said, it's a large, prominent hill with a very steep rise up to the top. And at the top of the hill are a number of compounds that are prominent OP positions that overlook the entire region. We see here the madrasa. This I presume to be the enemy headquarters because it's the most prominent building and also the most defensible. So starting right off the bat, I'm going to try to decapitate their leadership and destroy any OP that might be established there with the howitzers, the Panzer Haubitze 2000s. I have 2 sections of Panzer Haubitze 2000s, and I also have 2 A-10s on call as well. Preparatory fires for this operation are going to consist of destroying enemy OPs and then directly firing on suspected enemy positions that have been revealed to my force by reconnaissance, as well as using close air support against the same contacts. These A-10s are on call from the American commands.
Stand by for gas request.
Roger, en route to IP.
I guess I should also mention that a secondary objective of my mission is to, well, I guess it's the primary objective, is to capture a chemical plant to the northeast of this current position. Although my plan is not going to involve any motion to capture that plant, and I'm not really concerned about it. My plan is to capture the hilltop using mechanized forces and then to rain down hell upon the chemical plant if by that time the enemy has not surrendered or withdrawn. So starting off here, I'm directly targeting these enemy positions. It's not every mission that you'll have reconnaissance like this, so you have to take advantage of it. These are positions that are probably held by enemy. You can hear the ordnance destroying these hilltop OPs. If there's any one of those, they definitely had a bad day.
Roger, cleared hot.
So the entire company, the 112 Panzer Pioneer, is going to be arrayed eventually. They're going to be arriving within 15 minutes. And I also have a platoon of Panzer tanks. Platoon plus, actually. I think I have 6 tanks. The reason why such a high amount of armor is being attached to my company for this mission is because command suspects that the Syrians will launch an armored counterattack to relieve the hilltop fortress after I begin my assault upon it.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds. Out.
And the enemy should arrive from the highway MSR to the northeast, northeast. accordingly, I'm always going to have at least one section of tanks overwatching that MSR, and also the company forward observer element and company command element once they arrive.
Feueranforderungen kommen!
So now that the initial preparatory fires have completed and the enemy OPs are destroyed, I'm now going to switch fire to individual contacts, the ones that are closest to my axis of advance. My plan is to advance up the mountainside using the footpaths. In fact, that's the only way I can advance.
Dash 2 is in the pop. Inbound for
I plan to
attack.
move up
Cleared
on the
hot.
northwest side of the hill, staying as close as I can towards the MSR that leads up to the hill, and then skirt around the left and assault it from the flank. I don't want to attack down the center, mainly because I don't want to expose myself to any sort of potential counterattack from enemy armor coming on from the other side of the map.
Dash 1 is in the pop. Inbound for attack. 30 seconds
Roger,
out.
cleared hot.
So there's one OP that survived the preparatory bombardments. The roof is collapsed, but the building itself is still intact. And that's the one that I used the
Ready for
8 on
target.
to
I'm
call in
Winchester.
laser-guided bomb. Here comes another one. That bomb also damages the building, but does not destroy it. So that OP is going to have to be taken out by howitzers. At this point, I'm going to stop trying to use
Stand by for catch
the
request.
A-10s
Roger, cleared hot.
for to destroy buildings, and I'm
Roger.
going to just have them
IP.
interdict all enemy movements in the
Feueranforderungen empfangen.
tree lines there.
Ende.
Abgefeuert.
Feueranforderungen empfangen.
Abgefeuert. Ende.
So I guess I should discuss my maneuver plan now. I discussed it in brief before, but now a little bit more in depth. The plan is going to be as follows. I'm going to bound forward using tactical bounds and bounding overwatch to move towards the forest path leading up to the hilltop using the tank platoon. I'm then going to use traveling overwatch with the Panzer Pioneers to advance them
Achtung, Aufschlag, kommen!
Abgefeuert. Kommen.
to a battle position at the base of the mountain.
Abgefeuert. Ende.
I'm then going to slowly and carefully
Wirkungsschießen, kommen!
Inbound for attack. 30
proceed
seconds out.
along the mountain paths while
Verstanden.
interdicting areas in front of me with CAS and artillery.
Achtung, Aufschlag, kommen!
Aufschlag. Ende. Wirkungsschießen. Kommen. Verstanden. Wirkungsschießen. Ende.
Dash 2 is in the pop.
Roger, cleared hot.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out.
I'm really hoping that the intelligence is good and that I'm inflicting some casualties on the enemy right now. Because if the enemy is well fortified in those tree lines, I'm going to take heavy casualties in assaulting that hill. You can see here that the A-10 and the Panzer Haubitzers are raining some hell, but there are a few positions on the mountain that I was unable to target with artillery.
Dash 1 is in
Well,
the
I could have targeted them initially during the
Roger,
preparatory
clear
fires,
out.
but I can't target them now. So a platoon of Panthers has arrived. We're going to begin slowly. Going to get them in a battle position facing the enemy, and I'm going to prepare to bound them.
30 seconds out.
Meanwhile, another team of forward observers has arrived. I'm also going to put them in Overwatch.
Feuerauftrag beendet. Ende. Anforderungen kommen.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds.
Right now, I'm
out.
very wary about ATGM attacks.
Roger.
My only hope is
cleared
that the
hot.
preparatory fires were successful in suppressing or destroying them. Right now, I'm tempted to begin using some bounding overwatch to advance towards the hill, but I am still wary about
Dash
any
one is
ATGM that
ready
might
for
be
target.
overwatching
Guns
my
are dry.
position. So
Roger. Cleared hot.
I'm giving the aircraft and the howitzers a little bit more time to interdict enemy contacts. I'm worried about ATGMs that are up on the top of the ridgeline.
Roger.
Very
En route
difficult to
to
spot
IG.
the enemy in terrain such as this due to the heavy shrubbery.
Feueranforderung empfangen. Ende.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out.
Angefeuert, kommen.
Abgefeuert. Ende.
One of the A-10s dropped a GBU on some target over there to the northwest. Accordingly, I'm just gonna. What I did just there is I just ordered the tanks to fire on that relative position.
Achtung, Aufschlag, kommen.
Dash one is in the pub.
Roger. Cleared hot.
Wirkungsschießen, kommen.
Verstanden. Wirkungsschießen. Ende.
Once these two cast requests and this fire mission are completed, I'm going to go ahead and start bounding my tanks forward.
Feueranforderung empfangen. Ende.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out.
Abgefeuert, kommen. Abgefeuert, Ende.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out.
When I bound, I'm going to use pairs of two, aka wingmen,
Achtung, Aufschlag, kommen.
Aufschlag. Ende.
at a time. One section of tanks will cover the other section as they bound. And I'm going to move slowly forward. This way I have the maximum potential for spotting any ATGM shots that are being fired, or being directed down upon me.
Dash two is in the pub.
Roger. Cleared hot.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out. Dash one in the pop. Inbound for attack. 30 seconds. out.
Roger. Cleared hot.
Feuerauftrag beendet, Ende.
Some spotting rounds are landing to the west of my OP. They're pretty inaccurate, so it's nothing to worry about. So, what that leads me to do is, you know, I want to destroy that building that is still, that one OP that got away. But unfortunately, the smoke cloud from the other fire mission I sent up there is obstructing the view. So it's time for another fire mission elsewhere.
Feueranforderungen kommen.
Okay, so the main body of the company has arrived, 3 Panzer Pioneer platoons.
Inbound for attack, 30 seconds out. Dash 2 is in the pop.
Worried that these mortars might be exposed to any overwatching elements. So I'm just going to have the front row pop smoke, and the other vehicles are going to get online and orient towards the target in preparation for
Roger. Clear talk.
bounds toward the objective area. Meanwhile, a section of tanks is going to be in overwatch on the right flank, overwatching the MSR, and another section of tanks is going to be in the center, overwatching the general mountain area. The remainder platoon of tanks will be tactically bounding directly towards the objective area.
Dash 1 in the pop.
Roger. Clear talk.
I'm also going to leave a platoon of Panzer Pioneers in reserve, and they're going to remain dismounted and in a battle position. The reason why I'm keeping them in reserve is,
Feueranforderungen
well,
Ende.
I'm showing some respect to my enemy. If they do attack with a large armored force, I want
some target.
a reserve so that I can respond to their attack. It's always good to operate with a reserve, otherwise you really have no tactical options in a given operation.
Abgefeuert. Kommen.
Two strongest platoons are going to be maneuvering, and the weakest platoon is going to be used in reserve, the one that took some casualties in the previous mission and also
Roger.
lost one of their vehicles.
Abgefeuert. Ende.
Well, an enemy fire mission is landing off target. Also, with the company, also arrived 2 platoons of mortars, 120 millimeter mortars.
Feueranforderungen
Dash
kommen.
2
Now that the smoke is cleared, I'm going to go ahead and destroy that OP,
Aufschlag kommen.
because I suspect that's where the enemy is directing fire upon me from. Also going to do some area fire missions with the mortars, just to pepper the entire
Kommen.
countryside where I suspect there might be enemy ambushes. This fire mission that I'm doing right here, this is actually, these are actually preparatory bombardments for my assault on the center.
Feueranforderung. Kommen.
I'm about to start bounding a lot quicker now, be more
Roger.
aggressive.
Clear talk.
So I want to kill any enemy that are along the path that I intend to move my maneuver forces through.
Abgefeuert. Kommen. Abgefeuert. Ende.
Feueranforderung empfangen. Aufschlag. Kommen. Feueranforderung empfangen. Ende.
Aufschlag. Ende.
Wirkungsschießen. Kommen. Verstanden. Wirkungsschießen.
Inbound for
Ende.
attack, 30 seconds out.
Abgefeuert. Kommen.
Abgefeuert. Abgefeuert. Ende.
Abgefeuert. Kommen.
Abgefeuert. Ende. Achtung, Aufschlag.
Inbound for
Kommen.
attack. 30 seconds out.
Aufschlag. Ende.
Achtung, Aufschlag. Kommen.
Feueranforderungen empfangen. Ende.
Aufschlag. Ende.
Abgefeuert.
And 2
Kommen.
is in the pot.
Abgefeuert. Ende.
Roger. Cleared hot.
Abgefeuert. Kommen. Abgefeuert. Ende.
Abgefeuert. Kommen. Achtung, Aufschlag. Kommen.
Aufschlag. Ende.
Wirkungsschießen. Kommen. Roger. Cleared hot.
Achtung, Aufschlag. Kommen.
Aufschlag. Achtung, Aufschlag. Kommen. Wirkungsschlag. Kommen.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds
Wirkungsschießen.
out.
Kommen. Wirkungsschießen. Ende. Verstanden. Wirkungsschießen. Ende.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out. F2 is in the pot.
Feuerauftrag beendet. Ende. Roger. Cleared hot.
And 1 in the pot.
Roger. Cleared hot.
Now I'm just doing a little leader's recce of the path I'm going to be taking. So as you can see, it connects to an MSR that leads directly up to the mountaintop. It's a footpath that bends to the left and then hooks around right.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out. Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out.
And we're engaged by an ATGM on the mountaintop. I immediately direct all of the maneuvering tanks to fire on the position of the ATGM, which reveals itself in a bright flash.
Roger. Cleared hot.
Checking the damage here of those tanks.
Feuerauftrag beendet.
1
Ende.
in the pot.
Roger. Cleared hot.
So it looks like the ATGM hit my tank, or at least stay close, but luckily there was no major damage. And I'm fairly certain that it destroyed the contact. So I'm going to continue to bound forward. What I'm using here is I'm using what's known as alternate bounds.
30 seconds out.
Alternate bounds is when you bound past the element, the other element that you're bounding with. Instead of getting in line with them, you bound past them. So yeah. So what consecutive bound would be is if I took the section of tanks that is currently maneuvering and they went online with the other section, and then the other section started maneuvering. But this is looking
Aufrunde
ridiculous.
Ende.
Dash 1.
So I'm fairly certain that that contact is destroyed, so I'm going to go ahead and
Roger.
stop the Martyrs from moving up that hillside. Unfortunately, we're still taking ATGM fire. Seems like missiles are coming in from the right ridge line, even though that I already peppered that ridge line with artillery. So I'm pretty confused where it's coming from. It might actually be RPG fire because none of my overwatching elements have spotted an ATGM team. It might be like an RPG 29 or something. Regardless, I'm going to stop bounding, and I'm going to just have that platoon of tanks that was maneuvering, I'm just going to have them observe. Meanwhile, I'm going to suppress the only possible position of that, contact, which I believe is on this ridge that I'm firing at now. I'm going to prioritize cast onto that area as well.
Roger. En route to IG.
These Martyrs are just excellent at, just unloading a massive amount of firepower. The autocannon is so effective at suppression. Still taking sporadic RPG fire, no sign of the attacker. I'm going to break contact with the lead element of that tank platoon and bound backwards. Get online with the other section.
30 seconds. Out.
Salvo of missiles from the Martyrs are en route to that ridgeline. Also
Feueranforderung.
going to suppress my Martyrs.
Dash 1 on the pop.
Roger. Cleared hot.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds. Out.
I'm actually fairly certain at this point that it was an RPG team that was firing at me. Because the ATGM teams are pretty much, deadly accurate. At least the Special Forces are. So if it was Special Forces, then those shots were pretty inaccurate. They landed about 100 meters away from my tanks, which is pretty bad for an ATGM. So
Dash 1 is in the pop.
I'm just going to start bounding again, try to advance to contact.
Dash 2 is in the pop. Egress is target.
Roger. Cleared hot.
mortars at the assembly area. These ones are more accurate.
Abgefeuert. Kommen.
Abgefeuert. Ende.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out.
Satisfied that I've destroyed the RPG team, I'm now going to begin
Achtung, Aufschlag.
bounding
Kommen.
my mech infantry.
Aufschlag. Ende. Abgefeuert. Kommen. Abgefeuert. Ende.
Task 2 is in the pod.
Roger. Cleared hot. Achtung, Aufschlag. Kommen.
Aufschlag. Ende. Wirkungsschießen. Kommen.
Verstanden. Wirkungsschießen. Ende.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out.
Taking some airburst ordnance here.
F2 is in the pod.
Figure now's a good time to start moving out of the assembly area. What I should have done right here is I probably should have put my forward observers that were on the roof into cover, because it's pretty much a danger at that range, although not a serious danger. So it's about 75 meters away, which, I mean, it can cause casualties, but it's not, you know, 100% effective. One of the main reasons why
Feueranforderung. Kommen.
I didn't want to put them into cover just yet is because I'm pretty sure that the enemy RPG team, or whatever the contact was, that was firing while in position, is on the bridge here that I'm suppressing, and I wanted to get a fire mission off on it. And why do I think that the enemy is there? Because that's where the A-10 keeps strafing.
Feueranforderung empfangen. Ende.
And my sort of arrogance
Task 2 is in the pod.
has led to one of my forward observers being KIA'd.
Roger. Cleared hot.
Abgefeuert. Kommen.
Feuerauftrag beendet. Ende.
Abgefeuert. Ende. Achtung, Aufschlag. Ende.
Feueranforderung
Inbound for
empfangen.
attack.
Ende.
30 seconds out.
Abgefeuert. Kommen. Abgefeuert. Ende.
my plan for moving down the path and maneuvering to attack
Abgefeuert.
is going to
Kommen.
be as follows. I'm going to have 2 tanks in the front, and they're going to form a 3-up T with,
Aufschlag, kommen!
I guess I should say a 2-up T, with mech platoon in the rear.
Wirkungsschießen.
Pass
Kommen.
2, top.
Roger. Clear top.
Achtung, Aufschlag, kommen!
Wirkungsaufschlag. Ende.
For optimal security, I could dismount the entire mech platoon and then
Wirkungsschießen.
slowly screen the advance of the armor. But I'm taking a calculated risk, and in order to maintain a high tempo of attack, I'm going to keep the platoon mounted, and I'm putting faith in the suppressive abilities of the A-10s and the howitzers to have interdicted and destroyed the enemy forces in that area.
Feuerauftrag beendet. Ende.
Now I'm just assembling the file portion of the 2-up T. I'm also making sure that the tanks, one section of tanks is going to remain outside of the forest, and they're going to provide flank security against any potential attack that might occur from the MSR to the
Roger.
northeast.
Clear top.
Egressing from target. All ordnance released.
I mean, if I were to have more tanks in the forest, it wouldn't really be of much help to me anyway, so
Feuerauftrag
like,
beendet. Ende!
it's not like I would gain anything by having that extra section of tanks in the forest. It would just
Stand by
create a
for
traffic
catch
jam.
Roger. En route to IP.
Stand by for catch and crit.
And now I'm also doing some close air support directly in front of my advance. This way I'll rattle or destroy any enemy forces that are opposing my movement. Very slow and dangerous process. We're just gonna turn my commanders out of those tanks. This way they have an added bonus to short-range visibility. We're just gonna slowly hunt down those paths.
Break. Abort.
And we're gonna call off the cast at this point because I don't want any friendly fire situations. If I wanted to, be really safe, I could have probably just halted my advance and then let the cast come in and then continued. But I'm really trying to keep this tempo up because I want to attack the hilltop before I want to attack and occupy the hilltop before the enemy armored QRF gets here. So far, so good. This is Ambush Alley. It's essentially textbook ground for an L-shaped ambush. terrain is bogging down my movement. Now would be an ideal time for an ambush. One tank is securing the path to the northeast. The other tank is securing the path to the northwest. The mechanized convoy will exploit the breach to the northwest. And we see here, I'm trying to target this potential contact in the valley. This is what I was talking about before. This contact I was very worried about, because I haven't directed any fires onto that position. And up until now, I haven't been able to target it. It's a reverse slope ambush position. Although, you know, it's sort of hard to tell during the chaos if they were suppressed or destroyed. Really to really tell. So, as the mechanized elements began to move, heavy machine gun opened fire on one of my tanks, and the tank responded with immediate accurate fire and destroyed the heavy machine gun team. And now the ambush begins. The second IFD and the convoy is taking a direct RPG hit to the rear from the direction of that contact that I was just calling a fire mission on. I'm going to immediately get online towards the contact, pop smoke, and dismount my forces. And at this point, I make the decision that I'm going to have to dismount and assault and clear forward in order to move the second platoon through this gap. And again, I'm not really sure where the fire is coming from. That's the most difficult thing about this terrain, is that the fire can be coming from anywhere, really. And I'm pretty surprised that enemy infantry, I assume it's infantry at least, I'm surprised that they didn't fire upon my tanks when they rolled through.
Verstanden. Wirkungsziel. Ende.
At this point, I really regret not screening my vehicles with infantry. But, you know, hindsight is 20/20. I lost a martyr, and half of a section was also KIA, or at least knocked unconscious. And, yeah, it's really bad. It's a really bad loss. And that, I heard it then. That I know for a fact that's an RPG-29. And it's coming out of the trees directly to the 12 o'clock of the martyr that I'm looking at right now. Get the vehicles out of the kill zone, and then clear the route with infantry. I don't want to dismount, and I don't want to use the 2nd Panther Grenadier platoon, because I want them to be fresh for the assault on the main objective. Accordingly, I'm going to dismount the platoon that just took some hits, and I'm going to try to start clearing the forest there. pretty horrible because I can't actually see what's in front of my forces. I'm just hoping that any enemy contact is, bound to be danger close and very nasty. Hopefully the arty that I'm calling in, is suppressed or at least destroyed the contact.
Stand by for Catcher Crest.
Calling in some danger close casts up the hill line to protect my forces from any reactive ambushes that might be occurring right
Roger.
now.
En route to IP.
Way off talk bandits. Ended.
So I have this Panzer Grenadier platoon advancing online, using tactical bounds through the woodwork here. I'm going to try to advance the contact and destroy the contact. So now they're taking some small arms fire. Or, never mind. This, the lead tank on the route to the hillside or the hilltop is taking fire from a Syrian regular forces headquarters element. This is sort of what I was worried about. I'm worried about, follow-on actions, follow-on ambush. These two vehicles that are leading the convoy are essentially cut off from the rest of the company because I can't move any forces through that gap that is behind them. Otherwise, they're likely to be interdicted by that RPG.
That 2 is in the pop.
Roger. Cleared hop.
Inbound
So,
for attack.
total
30 seconds out.
Total casualties from that martyr ambush was times 5. 4 from the Panzer Grenadier section and also a crewman from the martyr itself.
Egressing from target. Guns are dry. Dash 1 in the pop.
Roger.
So I
Cleared hop.
found the remains of a Special Forces platoon headquarters, but I suspect that it was destroyed during the preparatory bombardment and wasn't the contact that fired upon me, although it's possible that it was. I'm going to have the Leopard on the flank pop smoke, and then I'm going to try to slip the rest of this platoon through. They're going to clear the way up to the hilltop, and then the Panzer Grenadier platoon that's currently in reserve is going to exploit the breach that this platoon creates and then assault using their dismounts. So we have an audio contact in this center of this clearing ahead. Perhaps could be where the enemy was coming from. Unfortunately, at this point, I'm not in contact with my commands. These lead spots here are not in contact with commands, so their spotting ability is greatly reduced. And as I'm saying that, an AGS automatic grenade fire comes down from the mountainside
Gas line is in the pod.
and utterly destroys that entire section of infantry. It's not really something that I could have avoided or that I could have anticipated. So at this point, I come to two conclusions. Number one, I'm not going to attempt to clear that side of the mountainside. I'm just going to cordon it and avoid it. Number two, the RPG team was probably that platoon headquarters that was KIA. So I can safely move the rest of the vehicles down this route, or at least, hopefully. Meanwhile, along the MSR, some BTR-60s have been spotted by the chemical plant. This leads me to believe that they are the lead elements of a Syrian battle group that is about to counterattack my position. Accordingly, I'm going to detach one of the sections from the overwatching platoon and move them to support the maneuver platoon. Meanwhile, the maneuver platoon is firing at will at the armored vehicles along the MSR. I'm going to redirect the A-10 bombers to interdict vehicles in that vicinity. The ROE states that I'm unable to engage the pesticide plants, but I'm not really worried about the ROEs at this point. And I figure that any cast that's sent into that area will engage the vehicles first and not any infantry contacts that might be in the pesticide plant. So, now directing all casts into the MSR. Meanwhile, the overwatching tanks are beginning to engage.
Stand by for catch request.
BTRs are no match for my tanks. In fact, they have no defenses against them whatsoever. The enemy mechanized infantry are killed before they have a chance to dismount. At least a large portion of them are. Meanwhile, trying to speed up my attack onto the mountaintop. I managed to slip through both platoons. So unfortunately, this Panzer Grenadier platoon has basically been decimated. It's down to less than 30% strength. Between the mortar that got hit and the dismount section that was torn apart by that AGS, it's very embarrassing.
Inbound for attack. 30
Nonetheless, we must continue to advance and attack. We need to capture the hilltop before the enemy reinforcements reach it. Even though I'm interdicting the enemy forces with fire, the enemy relief forces that is, there is still a route. There's a route up to the hilltop on the opposite side of the hill, on the northwest side. And, correction, I should say the true north side. And I don't have eyes on that position, so I want to try to get to the hilltop as quickly as possible. Also, what that was just there a couple of moments ago was the AGS that probably killed my squad, firing on the tanks, and I'm unable to spot it.
30 seconds.
Meanwhile, the lead tanks are coming into small arms fire. I notice at extremely close range an ATGM team.
30 seconds out.
They're too close to use the ATGM, but they're throwing grenades at the tanks and shooting at their optics. Luckily, the quick action of one of the tanks neutralizes the ATGM team.
Roger. Cleared hot.
Dash 2 is in the pot.
Roger. Cleared hot.
All ordnance released.
Stand by for cast threat.
Roger. En route to IP.
In the distance, you can hear the ordnance of those A-10s.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out.
Meeting their mark against the Syrian armored forces that are arriving. One of the surest ways to defeat an enemy is to disrupt him before he can assemble. Attack him at his FUP, and he quickly become combat ineffective. Here the enemy is, rolling into the area of operations in a road column, and
Roger.
frankly,
Cleared
I'm
hot.
very effectively disrupting their movement, and their attack, therefore, will become rushed or clumsy. Now we spot the first tanks. A T-72 crests the ridgeline and immediately comes into fire by the overwatching Panther Pioneer platoon.
Out. Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out.
An AGS fire from the ridgeline is coming down upon my forces.
Roger. Cleared hot.
In my experience, I've found that it's impossible to spot AGS fire, or I should say the source of AGS fire in this new expansion, NATO. You'd think that a high rate of fire weapon, with hundreds of grenades arcing through the air would tip off a forward observer, but apparently
Dash
not.
2 is in the pot.
Roger. Cleared hot.
It's not like I didn't have, a dozen pair of eyes on that mountaintop. Many of them trained forward observers.
Egressing from target.
Still,
All
the
ordnance released.
AGS ambushed my forces.
Stand by for gas request.
Roger. En route.
So I'm going to move these martyrs out of the way. Martyrs are taking AGS fire. I don't want to lose another vehicle. Another 2 more tanks are cresting. I'm going to slowly advance a section of tanks to contact in order to spoil the enemy attack.
Dash 2 in the pot.
Roger. Cleared hot.
Egressing from target. All ordnance released.
Now I'm going to attempt to interdict the enemy movement with my howitzers as well. The main reason why I'm doing this is that I noticed that the enemy is rushing towards the footpath up the mountain.
30 seconds out.
So I want to interdict them before they get out of sight and cut off my attacking forces. Even though that they are taking heavy casualties and my Overwatch elements are effectively destroying their main effort, I'm still worried about forces slipping through. So the artillery used as a shield and as a containment and area denial will ensure that no forces break through.
Dash 1 in the pop.
Roger. Cleared hot.
We're almost at the top of the hill, and I expect to soon be engaged by a large force of determined Syrian special forces. At this rate of attrition and loss, it's only a matter of time before the Syrians surrender.
Inbound for attack. 30 seconds out.
I've destroyed approximately battalion minus of armored vehicles. I would say approximately 2 companies. About 10 tanks and then a handful of assorted BTRs and B&Bs. Now time to assault
Roger,
the hilltop.
cleared hall. Abgefeuert, kommen.
Abgefeuert, Ende.
Achtung, Aufschlag, kommen. Aufschlag, Ende. Wirkungsschießen, kommen.
Verstanden, Wirkungsschießen, Ende.
And victory.